why you're applying for the grant, how much you're applying for, and what you'd like to do with the resources. And I will share, I'll screen share your application for our reference, just the section where you talk about what you're going to do with the grant. And then afterwards, we'll discuss and take questions from commissioners, and then we will vote to either advance the grant application to the full ANC meeting in 2 weeks, or further discuss. And I should add, for any that we vote to advance, we'll still need to get Office of ANC approval for these grants. So that will also be a next step. So any vote to advance a grant this evening is going to be subject to Office of ANC approval. If they come back and say there are some areas that need to be resolved, then we'll have to discuss that before the ANC meeting. Great. So our first applicant is Momentum Health. Sammy, if you're on the line. And I think I can share my screen, yes? Okay.
Yeah. Who is representing Momentum Health?
Hey, Sammy Nesbitt.
Okay.
Good morning. I don't know if everyone can see me or not.
Yes, and can hear you. Thanks for joining us.
And thank you for having me.
Would you want to get started just with some background on the organization, what you're doing, why you're applying for the grant, and how the ANC might be able to help by providing the grant?
Absolutely. So my name is Sammy Nesbitt. I am the CEO of Momentum Health. We are a growing technology collaborative here in the ANC. We are rather new to the community, but our roots are rather strong in the DC area. We are a food production cloud kitchen nonprofit. So essentially we give a lot of our meals away for free to our homeless neighbors and also our youth neighbors who are homeless and needing assistance. And we are considered to be still a startup. We're in our 5th year of operation here in Washington, D.C. And so I'm really excited about the great things that we have accomplished in year number 5.
Awesome. And you're requesting a grant for the Healthy Brothers and Food Leaders Innovation Program. Is that right?
Yes. So we are essentially requesting the ANC support our general operating costs for our community health initiatives, Healthy Brothers and Food Leadership Innovation Program. So as an organization, we are self-sustaining. And so we provide and fund all of our programs because our donors essentially aren't non-existent. We have to kind of create our own programs so that way we're not dependent on someone else's dollars. And so we created 2 programs a couple of years ago called Healthy Brothers and Food Leaders Innovation Program, or FLIP. FLIP is a workforce innovation program that is essentially in partnership with our cloud kitchen. And Healthy Brothers is an online social support group for socially isolated queer youth of color who are living in the South and also living in Washington, D.C. The program really got a huge footing during the pandemic because a lot of queer youth were socially isolated during the pandemic and suffered from multiple problems outside of COVID. And the grant would also support our virtual food pantry program that we have here in the ANC. Currently, we feed our homeless neighbors in a very innovative way. And so the grant funds will also be in partnership with that. We apply for general support for all 3 programs, and not just for the Healthy Brothers and Food Leadership program, but we do rely heavily upon both of those, not both of those, but both participants from both programs to help the virtual food pantry program.
Great, and I'm seeing here, so that's 235 unhoused neighbors in Adams Morgan that are benefiting from the meals program right now?
That's 235 meals that we give out.
Okay.
So we typically give out around 9 to 12 meals every couple days because of our kitchen production numbers. We don't necessarily have a need for food every day. And so we give away our extras, or we cook an extra meal every couple days to benefit our homeless neighbors. Right now that has been infrequent. But with the ANC grant, it would essentially support a more frequent program for a virtual food pantry that directly benefits our unhoused neighbors in Unity Park and SunTrust Plaza as well.
I'm gonna move to the budget just so
Okay.
we can look at that specifically, because I think that will be helpful. And do you want to just talk through each of these items? You can name which, if you can explain a bit which program they relate to, and
Yes.
yeah.
So the Healthy Brothers program, it is a program that is sponsored by our organization. We do a contract with a licensed professional counselor, Dr. Marlon Johnson at Seminary of the Southwest. He is a wealth of resources for our participants, not only just for group counseling, but his interns also do provide emergency counseling for our participants outside of the Healthy Brothers program. And so we're asking for the grant to cover the expenses for 2 months for Dr. Marlon Johnson. He provides weekly counseling sessions to our participants at their use, but essentially the grant will cover the costs that we typically incur for the 2 months of the project. We're also requesting the emergency meals program be given consistent meals or given consistent support, essentially. So the $442 is actual calculation of how many meals we're planning to give out from April all the way till June. The way we kind of count the cost is we count the cost associated with the food that we have to purchase, and we also count the cost of the food that we have to give away, or like delivery cost, or like cost to essentially package everything safely. There are a lot of programs that currently give food away to our homeless neighbors in the community, but a lot of those programs don't happen after 7 o'clock. And so it does provide a feeding gap. I don't know about you, but I get hungry after 7 o'clock. And if you could only imagine what it's like to be unhoused and not have any money or consistent access to money, and then be hungry. It leads to panhandling and loitering and sometimes stealing out of grocery stores. And so we believe that the Emergency Meals program can essentially benefit the ANC by having a consistent meal program on Mondays after 9 o'clock. We're asking for the website and print marketing to be supported by the grant as well. As the year progresses, we would like to maintain a more secure database for our homeless neighbors in our community. And so we would appreciate if we can have some support as we're doing the data collection of our food pantry program, and making sure that we have a stable website and also print marketing for the cards that we're planning to hand out as well. We're also requesting the ANC support our 3 program interns that support that kind of keep our programs flowing. And so that would be the Healthy Brothers program, the food pantry program, and also the FLIP program. And then our program support, which is just a general item that we're asking for support for, and that's a virtual meeting platform for the online support group. We currently incur that cost as an organization. We're asking for the ANC to provide us support so that way we don't have to consistently pay for cost of items that that would be a financial burden to us.
And can you just remind us what the total grant amount you're requesting is?
I'm sorry.
The total amount is
3507. If I'm not mistaken.
3507. Okay. Great. Gone too far here. A couple quick comments, and then I'll invite some of the other commissioners to ask questions as well, so I'm not monopolizing this. I think we exchanged a little bit of communication about this, but the ANC WNC grant policy doesn't permit grants to cover operating expenses. What an operating expense is isn't defined in that policy. So I don't know in this moment if that would or wouldn't require us to do a waiver to cover something like intern costs or an office subscription. It's also a matter of interpretation if that's, if the office subscription is for the project platform to be able to deliver counseling. I don't know if that counts as an operating cost.
And I would like to add that two of our interns are direct ANC residents, and so that it would benefit ANC residents as well. It would maintain jobs, essentially. It would maintain jobs, but it would also kind of support our greater programming for our by providing a Microsoft Office platform. I would provide consistent platforms, essentially.
Great, that's good. That's good to know. And I believe we might have to similarly do a waiver for food. Obviously, this is not for food as in some type of event. These are emergency meals. I think that's extremely justified. But that just we might just have to discuss that with the full ANC so that that's fully understood. One last comment on that total amount. Grants are made in amounts of $1,000, $2,000, and $4,000. So you may need to raise or lower the grant request. I think we can work that out as we're forwarding this application to the Office of ANC for review. And I'm sorry, again, I don't have perfect answers for some of this today. This is our first grant review as a new ANC, so we're still working some of those kinks out, but we have 2 weeks before the full meeting, so there's some time to discuss. Want to allow the other PSC members, other commissioners, to ask some questions. And please let me know if I should move to a certain place in the document for reference.
This is Ben. I would say that first, I really love the innovation in these programs. I love the real community impact. I would be really interested to hear if you have any success stories, anything from the first 5 years that you could share with us of just kind of the impact that the program has already made in general. I definitely can see the impact that it will make, but I would love to hear if there are any stories right now, just to kind of get that background.
Yes. So I can speak directly first about the FLIP program. So the FLIP program really started when we started as an organization. We started as a membership first of collective employees working together for Airmark franchises. Essentially, we gave jobs to people who couldn't get jobs. We gave jobs to convicted felons, people who had offenses that were seen as immoral and turpitude. We essentially gave people jobs that had a harder time getting opportunities. What we saw was that those communities and those jobs really bridged our youth to getting more sustainable living jobs. And with the FLIP program itself, one thing that's really unique about it is that we actually work on the skills that they're good at and not necessarily the skills that we require them to be great at. Skills such as how to code a mobile application, or skills such as how to grow their catering business. We're really giving our youth an opportunity to grow so that way they can get a better job and not necessarily send back to crime or things that could potentially not get them any further up in poverty, further out of poverty. When it comes to Healthy Brothers, so last year we were funded by the University of Texas at Austin and also Emory University. One of the greatest achievements from that project that I'm really excited about is that the fact that we provided counseling to over 98 young queer men in Texas. We were extremely proud of how many guys got on and talked about their problems and talked about how this program really saved them from suicide. There was no in-face counseling that was really occurring during the pandemic, and the Healthy Brothers provided a bridge and gap in services to a lot of our queer youth who are struggling with mental health services. And having a licensed practical counselor also gave them, that looked like them, gave them a destigmatizing view of mental health, especially in communities of color.
Great. Thank you for sharing. That's exactly what I was looking for. And thank you for sharing that with us and for, looking to our community as you move forward with this program.
Thank you.
And I'll be brief. Thanks, Sammy, for presenting all this. It's you clearly have a good grasp on being holistic, that none of these particular issues exist in a vacuum, and all these different things affect people in different ways, but everything's connected in some way or another. So that's both nice to see, and also like regarding the process of grant application. I think Celeste kind of hinted at it, but at least I'm happy to do what we need to do to waive any of the kind of things to make sure that this can kind of go together, because it seems pretty important that these are different pieces of a bigger puzzle in a sense. So I do like that. One question, just out of curiosity, really, and I think you might have answered it, but just in case I didn't hear properly, you were saying something about innovative ways of feeding neighbors. What did you mean by that?
So I actually tried to pull my wallet out to see if I had a card on me, but I don't. I give them away, so I'm really excited about that. But essentially, we give out these little small program cards. They're about the size of a business card, essentially. And on the back of it, it has a QR code for our homeless neighbors. It does require a little bit of IT work of them downloading the Uber Eats app or downloading Uber just in general and scanning the card on a particular day that we have our food pantry. And they essentially get the delivery wherever they're located. They just type in the address, they pick the comp item essentially, and it gets delivered to them for free without them paying for anything. We do have methods to prevent this from just being given out to the total public. But the reason why this program is innovative is it bridges the gap, the income inequality gap of people who can afford to get meals on Uber Eats as opposed to people who can't. But two, it also provides our unhoused neighbors the opportunity to have a meal at a place where they're not having to go across town and feel dehumanized or feel less than. It really provides them the comfort in being wherever they're located, dealing with whatever they're located and being able to eat. That's what innovation really looks like for us. But this also, we're able to grow and scale this program into other wards. And so, of course, if we can prove that this program is successful, we have been applying for research and foundational grants to expand this program into wards who have who are experiencing food deserts.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. That's all I have.
Okay, and We have a few other commissioners online. I saw Commissioner Bowles had some comments and maybe some questions. I want to invite them to have a chance to speak as well or ask a follow-up question. I don't know if it's possible to raise your hands, or if none of you are speaking, then I'm assuming that.
I
No.
don't know if you can see, but Zach and Japer have their hand raised.
Ah, great. I can't, probably because I'm screen sharing. Could we hear from Commissioner Bowles first?
Hey, so this is really good. I'm excited about all of this. I think the only thing, and this is something that I had to work with last year, is just working with the Office of ANC to try to get these types of things funded. Unfortunately, they measure impact, or when I mean they, the Office of ANC measures impact way differently. For example, it's much easier for us to fund a porta potty at an event than it is to fund like direct services like what you're providing. So my only thing is if there is if there is a question or something from the Office of ANC, would you be interested in expanding your services or adjusting your budget, not necessarily to essentially to expand like the food or meal service option, as well as potentially paying for the cost of counseling services, as I think that those are more easily defendable, if that makes sense, using the latest emergency COVID act that they passed and different guidelines. So I guess my question is, would you be able to use funds just specifically for meal services or just specifically for counseling services if your original proposal isn't deemed appropriate through this proposed guideline?
Yes, so we would be able to expand our meal program farther than what we budgeted for with this grant application. So right now we budgeted for April all the way to June of feeding every Monday after 9 o'clock. And I think we allocated 20 meals per every Monday. And so if we do get pushback from the ANC, we essentially can expand the program into the end of the year and continue to feed on Mondays after 9 o'clock. And that's the same for the Healthy Brothers program. We do have 2 iterations of the program a year. We have a spring cohort and a fall cohort. And so essentially the grant funds can be kind of pushed into the fall cohort as well to cover the counseling sessions.
Oh, great. So yeah, as long as the committee can work with this, which I'm sure they can do this. So I'm excited for this program. Good job, guys.
Commissioner Gold.
Hi, thank you, Commissioner Carano. I apologize, I didn't have the opportunity to read these proposals in advance, so I'm sorry if my questions are more simplistic. I guess the question I have was one that the chair asked and it wasn't answered, and that's how many individuals in Adams Morgan are served by this program or could be served by this program given the grant.
So if we kind of look at February as an example of all 3 programs. So in the Healthy Brothers program, that benefits directly to participants that are in Adams Morgan. The FLIP program has 1 participant that lives in Adams Morgan. And then of course we gave 235 meals to our home unhoused neighbors in Adams Morgan in February alone. We can almost predict that those numbers will be the same for April, May, and June during the duration of the grant. The only difference that I would project would be that we will have more participants in our Healthy Brothers program because right now I believe the program only has 9 participants and it can have up to 12 before Marlon kind of says I can't handle any more participants. But essentially we can add 3 more participants that are directly here, that are directly located in the ANC, which we plan to do before this grant was applied for.
So the 235 meals, is that distributed to 9 to 12 individuals, or you don't track the individuals?
So we do track them. We started to track them with our new cards that we were planning to also get paid for by this grant. But those meals are tracked by how many meals we prepare on Sundays that are extra. So those numbers fluctuate by whatever our inventory looks like on Fridays. We can make it through the weekends with our cloud kitchen operations, but on Sundays is when we give away our meals. And so that's contingent upon whatever extra meals that we have or whatever meals that have been donated that we can salvage into giving more meals out. So essentially with $20, we can essentially create probably 10 meals from $20.
Sure. Thanks for that. And I'll take the time to look through this application between now and the full meeting. I think the only, it's really an exciting venture. I think that my concern has been raised by others with the amount of your grant request that is operation cost versus cost into the community. So I appreciate the application, and I'll definitely look forward to reading through it more closely and having that discussion with my colleagues. So thank you.
Absolutely. And as we stated in the evaluation piece, the cards that we do hand out, we're able to track not only just the location of where those deliveries went to, but we're also able to maintain a record of all of our individuals who are in our programs list through our cards. We're able to maintain consistent communication because we have their phone numbers and we're able to send them communication saying, hey, we're going to be feeding on these particular dates. And so we have done the due diligence in making sure that every program that we do have funding for has thorough program evaluation set into place.
Those are all the hands I see.
Okay. Any additional questions from commissioners from the committee? Seeing shaking heads.
Nope.
Okay. It's fortunate I have Commissioner Bowles here. I'm not sure if I need to formally motion for this vote or whether the committee can just vote. I don't know if you can clue us in.
You need to have a motion in a second.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I would move the committee move this grant forward to the full ANC, subject to us adjusting the grant to the grant amount being adjusted and subject to the OANC's approval of this and of the grant contents.
Second.
Okay, shall we take a vote? All in favor?
Before we take a vote, I just want to for discussion of the grant. I think that I think when we do, this is more kind of in general, not just for this grant, but I think making sure that we have a good definition of what are operating versus program expenses, because I see a lot of these things could be to me, they look more like program expenses than operating. For operating, to me, that's like the actual organization, and things that are actually helping a program are program expenses, in my kind of opinion. But obviously, I am new here and I don't know all the definitions. But I do think we should clarify that, and especially for the community members who are applying, that we make it kind of clear what would fall into each one.
I agree. And I mean, some of it does fall out of our hands or out of our control, but at least from what I can see, this is, nothing in the application is going towards like paying full-time employees salaries or anything. And every line item seems to be justified well, is working well together. So like ideally, I'd like to see it all work together, but like I said, not entirely, unfortunately, our control.
Yeah, I hear you, Commissioner Butts, and I think I know grant application. I've worked for a nonprofit. Grant applications can be tricky to figure out how to align with all the requirements. So I think that we can aim to work with Momentum Health to ensure that those requirements are clear and advance a stronger application to the, tweaking this so that it is as strong as possible. And I think Commissioner Bowles has sent some suggestions along of how we can look into that as well.
Definitely. Thank you.
Okay. I believe I did have a second.
Yep.
Okay. So shall we move to a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. I will forward the application to OANC, and Sammy will be in touch to discuss these items over the next week. So do look out. I think this might be a quick turnaround on some things.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone's time.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Our next applicant is from the Marie Reed PTO, I believe. Bridget? I think she's on the line.
Hi.
Hi, Bridget, welcome. Let me just pull up your application. Do you want to start with just a general introduction to yourself and the organization you're presenting?
Sure. I'm Bridget Honeycutt, and thank you all for having me and considering our application. I have been a longtime resident of Square 150, which is between the police station and Pleasant Pops. I moved there in 2004, not, as a young professional. Now I have two kids, both attend Marie Reed Elementary School. One's in 3rd grade and the other is in 1st grade. And we've had an amazing experience at our neighborhood school, which I'm so grateful for. And I am a part of the PTO community. And am presenting sort of our application for a really important program to the school. And I don't know how familiar you are with the school. Would it be helpful if I gave some information about that?
That'd be great.
So we have 450 students at Marie Reed. We are a very diverse community. It is a Title I school. So 40% of our students qualify for free lunch or reduced lunch. We are 57% are English language learners, and we're 54% Hispanic, 18% white, 16% Black, 7% Asian, 5% multiracial. So we are very diverse, and we love that about our community. We have a dual language program. We also have an English program, and we have a special program for behavioral and educational supports for kids who need additional emotional or behavior support. So we have about 4 years ago, our principal, Principal Lundgren, came to the PTO and told us about this incredible program, Food Prints, and invited some of us to go view it happening at another DCPS school. And I wasn't actually there, but I heard from all the parents like how incredible it was. Basically, kids are working, they start out in the garden, which Food Prints helps us manage and create. And in the garden, they learn a lot of science skills. So they'll talk about photosynthesis, they talk about the environment, they talk about identifying plants. Then they actually grow food. They take the food and bring it into a student kitchen that we actually have in our new facility, which is really amazing. We're so fortunate to have. And they actually make recipes with the food that they grew, and sometimes additional things because we're still getting better at growing food. But anyway, they have incredible recipes, so the kids really have a lot of fun making things together. And they then learn about nutrition, and when they're making the recipes they also do some math about measuring and all of those things. The food print program comes with the educator that specializes, and they're really good at gearing these things from pre-K 3 all the way to 5th grade, which is not an easy thing to do, but it's pretty incredible. I have volunteered in the classroom for these sessions, and like the little kids, they'll bring in the worms and they'll talk about composting and the environment and how the worm works. And anyway, it's been pretty incredible experience. I can really speak as sort of a parent who have 2 kids who love it. But also as a PTO member, we have traditionally paid about $5,000 for this program as the PTO. And Food Prints has been incredibly resourceful themselves and have been able to help us supplement some of the payments or some of the costs that they have, which include supplies and other things. But this year, the PTO with COVID has really had to shift a lot of our attention to, sort of helping our kids and our families that are really in crisis situations. We have been our community's been hit very hard by the pandemic. So we're doing a lot of work right now with sort of emergency relief, but also thinking about next year, what's most important to sort of helping academic recovery. And Food Prints has been one of the main things that sort of brings our community together, where they really have fun while they're learning. And so this has sort of been earmarked by our staff, our teachers, our principal, and other family members. This is really a key program. So that's I don't know if there's any questions or if I should provide more detail in certain areas.
That's, I think that's super helpful. So benefiting, the Food Prints is benefiting 450 students in pre-K to 5th grade, that looks like. And I just want to pull up your budget quickly.
I would also say, it definitely benefits the families as well. Very often do you have kids come home and say, hey, kale salad is the best thing ever. We should get kale more, which is actually, what happens after these classes. It's pretty incredible. And I should say also that I think Patty might be on the phone, who's the coordinator between Marie Reed and Food Prints. And we also have Jill on the phone, who is our Marie Reed Food Print instructor, who's incredible. She actually is just coming off of a community virtual recipe that she did for our families.
That's awesome. Commissioners Woods or Wood, do you have any questions while I am trying to pull up budget from my email?
Again, this is just an amazing project. Going through and just looking at the curriculum, I can understand why it's such a beloved program. The only question I had is just clarifying, in the application, it looked like this was to expand the program. And just kind of in your explanation, it sounded a little bit like it was more like a bridge to make sure that the program is still able to exist. And I just want a little clarification on kind of what the intent is for the ANC with the program.
Yeah, so the program is going to be the same. I'm sorry if I made it sound different in the in the application, but it is the same. The PTO, though, we know is going to be responsible for a larger portion than what we've had to do in the past. I think it's important just to note that we are also not a traditional PTO. So we don't have membership dues. That's not, we want to be as inclusive as possible. So we don't have, you know, a huge budget and lots of donations within our parent community, just because that's not the kind of community we have that's able to do those kinds of things. So we have traditionally for this program been able to raise about $5,000 within our PTO sort of and parent community. And we do fundraisers like bake sales and things like that. We have been sort of alerted to the fact that because of various other academic accelerators that we're going to be doing, and because of some other sponsors who have maybe funded the organization itself, they've lost some funding. So we've been sort of alerted that we need to be up closer to the $9,000 or $10,000 mark in order to keep it alive for next year.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that explanation. That clarifies it for me.
And Jill, you're so wonderful and you're here. I don't know if you want to say anything. I'm sure I missed lots of important things.
No, you did awesome, Bridget. It was lovely listening to you. Yeah, I will just let you guys know, obviously with the whole pandemic, our program has really kind of had to pivot and think outside the box about how we can reach and work with these kids. A big part of it is cooking in person with them, and clearly that has not been able to happen. So I did enjoy having one of Bridget's kids in my virtual cooking class, which we've been doing. And this year we have been providing bags of produce to the families so they can pick the bags of produce up the day before, and then they have the ingredients and we cook together, everybody in their own home. Just really trying to keep these kids connected with good food and local produce from the farm market. Everything is purchased at the farm market for the kids. And just, it's been challenging, but the Marie Reed community has been so awesome and supportive and just really trying to help us bring this program to the kids. And as far as future planning and this spring and then also next school year, we are just really trying to continue to work with Marie Reed. We're going to try to pivot a little more towards outdoor and garden education and not so much we won't probably be able to do in-person cooking. We may continue some of our virtual cooking classes, but we really want to have an emphasis on outdoor education and gardening and bringing the science and the SEL stuff into it, and just having the kids really try to strengthen their community and get some families involved as well. So Marie Reed has been really, really great and really supportive, trying to bring this to their students.
Just two quick things. One was in the chat. You said purchasing at the farmers market, is that Adams Morgan Farmers Market or elsewhere?
Usually we're purchasing from the DuPont Circle Farmers Market, if possible. That's our our program is through Fresh Farm, which we run the DuPont Circle Farmers Market, and we work with a pop-up food hub that is also affiliated with our nonprofit. And then that pop-up food hub is what does the food delivery to the schools for the families to pick up. So the majority of the time we're purchasing at the DuPont Circle Farmers Market.
Yeah, seems like an interesting justification though. And my other question, I think you kind of answered it, but just kind of out of curiosity, and I'm really not trying to turn this into like an epidemiological discussion. I know it gets tense, but like besides the switching to virtual cooking things, especially when it comes to hands-on gardening, like for the time being, what kind of COVID protocols have you had to adapt, and what do you think looking forward?
Yeah, so we've actually I've just been working with the principal at Marie Reed, trying to put together how our garden classes are going to look. And we will be following all of the COVID protocol that the school is actually following. And as far as only a certain number of kids will come out, they can only be in the garden when no one is on the playground. So we'll be sort of bringing kids in when the other outside areas are not in use. They will be out there, for a certain period of time. Once they are done, we will be then sanitizing and cleaning or bringing in new things for them to be using in the garden. We'll be doing crafts with them, planting, harvesting, weeding, well, all the things that we do with the kids, but we will be doing it. All the food prince teachers have just been going through figuring out how we will be able to follow COVID protocols. Obviously, we'll be wearing masks, kids and all adults will be wearing masks. And I know because we will be outside, we will be able to see different groups of kids as they rotate in. But they will just come with their classroom teacher only as the other adult with them, who will then help monitor the kids. And once they're done, we will then have time in between the classes to set up for the new group of kids coming. So yeah, so logistically, we are kind of working on everything. We want to follow all of the guidelines that Marie Reed is currently following for COVID.
I'm guessing you didn't get to try that last year. This would be the first time having to all in-person stuff.
Yes, this is all kind of, we are trying so hard to make this happen. Last year, we were just blindsided because everything we did was so hands-on and in-person and just cannot work in a pandemic. So yeah, we're trying to, we actually have a group of food prince teachers who's coming up with COVID protocol for our garden classes.
And I saw another comment or question from Kristen in the chat. Like critters, I'm guessing the garden is that strip that's along 18th Street, adjacent to the.
Actually, the garden, and Bridget, you might be able to tell me on this. The garden is at the back of the school by the playground for the ECE kids, the younger kids. So it is not visible from 18th Street.
It's on the Ontario side, on the Ontario Street side.
It's like critter, just because I think it's interesting, Chris brought it up, like squirrels and things. Have you been able to have success keeping those out?
We actually have done pretty well. The worst scenario that we've had so far is there is a cat, I guess, that kind of enjoys using one of the garden beds. So that's my biggest thing right now, is working on that. Really, we have not had critter as in squirrel issues too much. We do have some garden pests, but it's more like moths on the kale and things like that, which we do a lot of organic methods of controlling that. So far, it's not been bad. We've been really lucky.
I mean, I'm just guessing here, but there's even a chance the cat's keeping rats away. So I wouldn't.
And if they're doing that, then you know what? I might have to make that bed the special cat bed.
Who knows? Yeah, you need to put a camera on it, see what it's doing at night.
I know. I should do that. That would be good.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Yep.
Jill or Bridget, sorry it took me a moment to pull that, but I have your budget here, and this is for the full food prints program, right? And I'm sorry if I missed something, but is there a particular line item here that this grant would support, or is this a general contribution towards the program that the program could then use as they choose?
So we never typically break it out necessarily. Like, we just know that we need that much to make it happen. And typically we have to pay about $5,000 of that as the PTO, but this year we think it's going to be closer to the 10,000 in order to make it happen. So we don't typically break up like exactly what line item is in the past. So it's just really a matter of getting to that whole figure.
Yeah, and I can just add to what Bridget is saying. Normally, like each of the schools, I think we're in about, well, we were before the pandemic in about 15 different schools in DC, and each school has a different budget. And in the beginning, we sit down with the school to figure out what the contribution, what a manageable contribution is from the PTO or the PTA. And then that goes into the total budget that we plan for the year.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do think we will probably need to have you all submit a line item budget for the grant itself. And do you think it would be feasible to have a conversation with them on what this could potentially support from these areas? Looks like I think you could make a case for most of this, whether given its instruction, gardening supplies, so on and so forth. So, but yeah, would that be feasible?
Yeah, I'd be happy to break that out and try to sort of outline it with Patty, who's on the call as well, who coordinates with the school, and Jill from Food Prints to kind of say, all right, these are the portions that the PTO can use for this grant.
Great. That's all for me. I see Commissioner Gold has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize that I had some technical difficulties, so I missed the beginning of this presentation. But I have three questions, I suppose. And initially, my question was what the effect of having the budget would be, because it sounds like you normally put forward, or you normally have about 9,000. But looking at that other budget, it seems like that's not the case. It's not a halving of the budget, if you will, because the budget itself is 36,000, and that is supported mostly by fresh farms, if I'm understanding the process correctly. But I guess generally, like, this sounds like a great program. It sounds like it's great for the kids. Certainly, if I was taught about vegetables when I was in school, maybe I would eat them now. But I guess what is, assuming that but were we to not give this grant, what is the effect on the program?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of give you a snapshot of where we actually are this year, we have about 42 families that are sort of really in a crisis situation. So the PTO has really shifted almost all of our funds that we would normally use for anything else, and all of our funds that would cover things like Food Prints for next year, or even before and after care, to emergency sort of situation needs. So we are buying gift cards for groceries. We have a community support fund. We're doing, we bought all of our kids that needed them winter coats. There's just been an endless needs to make sure that our students can study safely at home. So right now we have allocated all of our resources to that. And this is going to be the first year in many years that we haven't had anything to start off next year. So that's kind of where we are. We also have any of the usual things that we do to fundraise. Normally it's event-based, or we sell t-shirts and things like that, where we can really be sort of in the community and asking, like saying, hey, we need this science program, help us with this. All of those things have been cut out. So we were sort of a growing parent community of engaged parents but this year, with all the students at home, very few parents can actually be engaged in PTO activities. So we are looking at a real challenge going into next year for even the $5,000 that we normally cover. But we are a small and mighty team, and we are committed to making sure that we can get there for Food Prints. But we also know that other sponsors have been challenged that have funded Food Prints on their side, as well as our school budget has a lot of demands for next year for academic accelerators, which I mentioned, and other things that we know that we're going to need for our kids. So Food Prints is, without the support, it's going to be challenging. I won't say it won't happen because I'm pretty committed to making sure that it will happen. But this is absolutely essential. I think, you know, just for encouragement too, honestly, it's going to be a challenge. And so this would be a great first step to let people know that, hey, we're halfway where we need to be. So.
Yeah, thank you. That, that my second question was going to be, what are the PTO's other priorities that other monies are being spent on? And I mean, supporting your community and your students and their families in this time is absolutely worthy and essential. So makes perfect sense to me. That's all I have for now. But again, as with the previous one, I look forward to reviewing this in the overall ANC meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I see a hand raised from Patricia Capetillo. Are you one of the?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I think it was up for before, like just to reassure, like, yeah, it's as Bridget said at the beginning, like our school diverse and a lot of families low income, that through this program, actually there's kids that have never seen some kind of type of vegetables, or it's really, really, really nice and important. Like even like some Fridays, instead of the normal cafeteria food in schools, DCPS even affects our cafeteria, and it bridges there, and the kids even like are exposed to eat on Fridays some of the foods in a regular year, the ones that they already learning how to pick, cook, and that. And especially this year has been amazing to see, like this has been an amazing way to connect the kids, at least virtually, in a fun way, because they've been suffering so much. Like and I'm so happy to see that we're moving with all the protocols that we follow at school, like through DCPS and through the all the following all the rules that DC Health putting in place these as an other programs, like with small cohorts for the kids to see that after a year their school is there, their friends are there, and it will be amazing, like to have, as Bridget said, like the PTO already has this support, because all the funds have been like to support this amount of families that lost their jobs, and we know like how's it going, and this is another great way like to support them. So
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like a really neat program. As what other commissioners said, maybe we would all eat more vegetables if we'd had something similar when we were children. Any other questions from commissioners, from the committee?
Can we expand it so the whole neighborhood gets to do this every night?
Yeah. In the interest of time, given we have 2 other applicants waiting, and I had suggested that they would have little earlier time slots, we're going a little longer than we'd planned. I do see a question in the chat. Is there a fund or a website to GoFundMe, as well as a comment to consider posting needs in the Adams Morgan IO group?
So I can absolutely, I want to also thank Megan Faulkner, who I met actually while we were trying to do a pandemic bake sale, which is probably not a good idea, but we're out there, and she stopped by and introduced herself and told us about this ANC grant. And she has also been helpful with us getting out the word about some of our emergency relief efforts and other things like this. So we are, I can send you all sort of information and put together a GoFundMe and things like that as well, and let all these wonderful people that are asking about it. And I think Patty also included just sort of our website, which does also have PTO funding links.
That's helpful. And I think that question also comes up because it's part of the grant application review is considering if you've looked for other funding sources or other fundraising that you're currently considering. So that's helpful context. Okay, if there are no other questions, I think this is a great grant, great project. I would move for the committee to recommend the full grant, again, subject to you all being able to produce a line item budget for this and subject to OANC approval.
Second that.
Great. Can we call it to a vote then, please? All in favor of advancing this to the full ANC meeting next month?
Aye.
You say aye? Aye. Great. Thank you all for joining tonight and presenting this. Please feel free to just send the additional budget information as soon as possible so that we can get that over to the Office of ANC, because we will need to have that looked at before we can take it to the full meeting in 2 weeks.
Great, we'll do that right away. Thank you all so much.
Great. Okay, so our next presenter is Dari, and as before, give me a moment to pull up the grant application, but if you want to and start sharing a bit about your organization.
Hi, I'm Dari Pogash. I'm also a Marie Reed mom, like Bridget and Patti. I have 3 kids, 3rd grade, 1st grade, and pre-K 3. And Marie Reed is also my in-boundary school. We've been there for 5 years since our oldest was 3. And it's certainly been an amazing way to feel entrenched in this great community. I think my husband and I just feel so fortunate that we decided to move here, and we're connected to the school and the surrounding community. So Bridget did a great job of describing our school. It's a Title I school, which means that at least 40% of our students qualify for free or reduced lunch. And that is, what that means is that they're living, there's a certain calculation around the federal poverty line that they're meeting. She also did a great job describing the diversity of our school. And so I won't spend too much time talking about that. So we have a project called the Marie Reed Community Support Fund. In last year, when the public health emergency began due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the school shut down in mid-March, like all the other DC public schools and schools across the country, families started communicating, texting, emailing, and saying, what's happening to many of our families right now who we know are probably experiencing an economic and social and emotional crisis. We were really worried. That's the kind of community that we are at Marie Reed. We're remarkably diverse, not just racially, not just ethnically, but also socioeconomically. But what I think is even more remarkable is not just the statistics, but the fact that we're a community. It's not perfect. I don't want to, oversell it, but we're a community that's really trying to create equity at our school. And we do that by parents and other family members, community members, staff, reaching out and connecting with each other and supporting each other. So I think that there was almost like this network that went out of communication. How are we going to help the families, and what do they need immediately? And so there were 2 things that came up right away. There was a shortage of technical devices because, of course, the kids were all suddenly learning virtually. And so many families didn't have laptops or iPads or access to Wi-Fi internet. And then, of course, there was a need for cash and food assistance because many parents lost their jobs almost immediately. And so about 5 or 6 parents decided, okay, let's just try to raise a little bit of cash and see if we can help by buying some computers, working with the school, and perhaps even helping with a little bit of cash assistance. And you can see in my introduction when I wrote this, by the summer, we had formed a network of 17 volunteers working with 40 families. We're up to 44 families as of today. I just got an email. And we've raised about $62,000 to $63,000 since March. That amount goes up a little bit every couple weeks. And I can, Celeste, do you want me to keep going or do you want to ask questions? Because I can keep talking, but.
I think that's a really helpful intro. I wanted to just make one quick observation for the benefit of the commissioners, which is, I know you're applying for this grant for the Marie Reed Community Support Fund. We just heard from the PTO. And these are separate organizations, but the fund is recent. You're just starting up. So you're applying to have this pass through the PTO, but go to the fund. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the fund is a grassroots effort by families. And our only goal is to, any money that comes in, the goal is to send it out, almost immediately. So we're not going to, we don't see a future as becoming a 501c3, but we've been working with the PTO, and the PTO will act as our fiscal agent should we be fortunate enough to receive this grant, to receive the funds on our behalf so that we can then distribute them to families. It's also a way that we can help the PTO because it's easier for us to do the cash distribution than for a 501c3. There's a lot of technical issues around that kind of relationship. So a lot of the parents, I work really closely with Bridget on fundraising, on support, both formally and informally, but they're two distinct projects. And they will benefit some of the same families, but I won't say it's not all overlap because, the reach will go out to different families or accessing help in different ways.
Okay. And is the fund, you said you don't have an intention to apply for a 501c3. So you're not looking to register to incorporate in DC at this time or to apply for 501c3 status at some point?
So what we're hoping to do is in some way to transition this grassroots effort over to the PTO by the end of the summer. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. We're working closely with the principal, with the members of the support fund and the PTO. This was truly a surprise grassroots effort. We saw a need and we wanted to act quickly. And if you have any experience with setting up a nonprofit, it can take a lot of time. So that's our intention. And in terms of timeline, we hope we can continue to support families at least through the end of the school year and possibly through August. But by September, we hope that the PTO will be able to, that the parental effort is going to be combined with the PTO effort.
Okay. I will just say briefly, I know I know you were in touch with Commissioner Faulkner on this, and there was some question of how best to apply for these two potential areas with two different actors, I suppose. And the ANC grant policy is that an organization, there's a limit to a grant that they can receive each year, and it's only one. So I think the question here is the Community Support Fund a sufficiently different and independent organization to also receive a grant if the ANC were to approve the grant for the PTO as well? And it sounds like this may just be something that is going to transition into the PTO, so that may not be the case. That's not to say that the ANC wouldn't want to support the fund, just that I'm not sure if we can treat this as treat the PTO as a fiscal agent and as a grantee at the same time. This is, so I just want to flag this in the, I think other commissioners will have questions on this, and I think the Office of ANC will probably have some questions on that as well. But can we quickly look at the budget for the grant before
Sure.
we dive into that?
You know, what I would say is we could look for a different fiscal agent if that was the issue. I think there are other organizations that would like to support our efforts because of the direct nature of the assistance and the aid and the grassroots nature of what we're doing. So if that is the obstacle, you know, I would be eager to look for a solution to that if that's the issue. I do want to emphasize that currently the two efforts, it's distinct. You know, it's not the same organization that's asking for two grants. It's just that we're such like an unusual effort, I think, at this point. It's sort of hard to classify what we're doing in some ways.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on that. I mean, I definitely like, especially with something that is you know, time sensitive as what you're all doing, which is great. Don't want to, you know, make you have to go through too many hoops just to do, you know, kind of the bare minimums. But we're also here as a buffer to make sure that, you know, the Office at ANC, who actually controls the budget, that they don't give you too hard of a time. You know, for any applicant that's, you know, doing something that's in good faith for the community. Well, you know, not my decision single-handedly, but I do think that probably wouldn't hurt to just be able to say, you know, this is a separate applicant from a separate group, but you know, up for discussion.
No, I really appreciate that. We did anticipate this possibly being an issue, which is why we asked about it. So I appreciate that you're following up on it and flagging it for us. And you know, I can, if you think finding a new fiscal agent would be helpful, I can try to do that.
Yeah, and just looking back at the grant application, so you attached the donations received to date. Did you also have a line item budget for how this grant would be used? I realize that's probably just saying donations distributed to X people.
Well, so is it not? Okay, so I redid this very quickly for the new form. I thought in that spreadsheet there's a second, is there not a second page? So we also keep track of all the money that goes out. And if that's not in there, I can send it.
Yes, so I see the donation amounts, and I don't know if I want to screen share this, but in terms of the actual,
it's a Google Doc. It's like a transparent.
Yes. I guess what I'm asking is, I'm not seeing, for example, a projected, like, projected where the money would flow out for the $4,000. Does that make sense?
Oh, I see. Oh, I can do that for you. I'm sorry. That's on me.
No problem.
This is not my day job, so I probably just didn't understand what you meant by a line item. So, you know, but we can certainly create that. It's pretty, you know, it's pretty straightforward. Like the money comes in and then it goes out. It's every month we make a cash disbursement to families. And we do the math, we divide however much we have. We wait until we have about a minimum of $200 per family, and then we're able to make the distributions. So I can certainly create a projected, if we receive 4,000 and we have 44 families, this is how it's going. What we would do is we would use those funds in combination with other funds we raise that month to give to families.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I expected if it's going out that quickly, it would be a pretty simple budget, but
I can do it.
Dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Additional questions from Commissioners Wood or Boots?
I don't have any questions. I have more, I guess, general comments and statements. In my mind, it's, I think, more of how do we get this to yes to make sure that we're in compliance with both kind of our rules and making sure that it actually we can get it through the office. So I think in terms of looking for a different fiscal agent, I think before we do that, we should make sure that that is something that we need to do. But to me, it's more of like, I think this is a really worthy cause. I think the amount of money that was already raised is outstanding, especially kind of with everything going out. And I think if we can help support this, you know, I'm full support, but I do think that we just need to, you know, kind of as the chair mentioned, just making sure that we've got everything kind of where it needs to be so that we can actually get the funds distributed and it's not a giant headache for you going back and forth as we go forward. So I think that's my only concern, but otherwise, you know, I think this is a very good cause for the neighborhood. And definitely I see the distinction between the two groups. And so I think that shouldn't be a problem, hopefully.
Oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of you and the community because it's really just been so supportive. Bridget mentioned we had an election day bake sale because Marie Reed is a polling site, and we raised almost $3,000 just from strangers walking up, and all, you know, we had our members of our group making good cake. And when I say members, what I want to emphasize is like this is a really a non-hierarchical mutual aid model. So both recipients and you know, we're all part of the same group. And it was so moving to see all these community members come up and enjoy the baked goods and get to know some of our parents and support us. We just had a Valentine's Day fundraiser where we papered the neighborhood and we raised another few $1,000s that way. So I just wanted to thank all of you because I'm so moved by the way that the community has supported us already. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I see a couple hands from other commissioners. Commissioner Faulkner.
Yeah, thank you. I obviously have, you know, I have been supportive of this project, and I think it's really great. But what I just wanted to say, with respect to the fiscal agent. The fiscal agent question, I believe in the past that the ANC has given grants to groups that themselves and then groups that same group acting as a fiscal agent for another group. We can talk about this more offline, you know, via email. But I do think that just recently we have done that. So because I have done some of the paperwork for that as the treasurer. So I just wanted to mention that I think we can probably figure out a way to make this compliant with OANC and with our grant policies, I hope.
Can I, could you actually expand on that just briefly and without getting into too many details on who or what, but was the total of that the total maximum the ANC could give per year split between the two, or did it go above it?
I think it went above it. I don't know off the top of my head. It was a group that was a little, you know, the one that was being fiscally sponsored is one that is a little more established than the Community Support Fund, you know, since it's been around for longer. But I believe the amount did go above because they are two separate organizations, and one just, I think they are fiscally sponsored by the larger one for lots of purposes. Not just the ANC grant purposes. So I do think the total was over 4,000. I don't think they each got 4,000. But I think that had to do with other things and not necessarily a concern about the grant amount.
Okay. Thank you. Helpful. Commissioner Gold.
Thank you. This is a worthy and immediate need. I guess my question sort of thinks about, it's less of a question as a statement for the other commissioners, is we there is an active emergency fund in our neighborhood through the Reed Cook Citizens Association. I also, a question I have is, I recognize that this was started by and led by Marie Reed families for Marie Reed families. There are other schools and daycares and institutions in our ANC whose families also could probably use emergency assistance. And so I guess, especially if you're separate from the PTO, what efforts could there be to help distribute additional funds from the ANC to families from other schools in the neighborhood?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it is. It's your program has been so far just with Marie Reed families, which is great, and Marie Reed families certainly need support. But H.D. Cook families need support, Oyster Adams families need support, etc.
Oh, absolutely. And I would encourage the ANC to support all the school families. I mean, I would never step in the way of more support. There's a ton of need right now. I think, as you can see from my grant proposal, we're struggling to keep up with the need at Marie Reed. We've raised about $60,000 in the last year, but we've got 44 families who really need help. The other reason I think our setup is so successful is because it's so hyper local. So you have families that have something in common. Their kids are in the same school, and they may have already known each other even before the public health emergency. And so we are able to start out with a little more trust and connection than, reaching across to other schools. One of, I think, the most important things that happens with our network is the cash distribution is of course the heart of the effort, but with that comes social and emotional support, because so many of our families are not documented, they're not receiving other public benefits, they don't speak English, and so this is a way to make a connection, to say, hey, I see you, I know you're there, and if you have a question, you can text me, or I might be able to help you find some more clothes and a size for your kid or something like that. So I think that's why it's worked so well on such a local level. And that's why we haven't been able to expand to other schools. But I would certainly support any projects at other schools too.
And I do think there's some lessons learned, just to add to that, we would be happy to meet with or talk with leaders or other parents at other schools that might want to do something like this. There've been a lot of lessons learned. But just an example of how I started volunteering with Dari's group. I was walking in the neighborhood and ran into a parent that I knew and had seen over the years, and just asked how she was doing. And, they were a thriving family in this neighborhood for over 6 years. And she just, broke down crying and said she didn't have enough money for her baby and for her kids that I know and that my kids know. And so I just emailed a few parents and said, I obviously helped right on at the moment, but what can we do? And turns out this support fund had already started, and it's really organized, but it's easy. So, each volunteer meets with 2 or 3 families, and we check in once a month, and we're giving them, sort of a basic amount to cover bare essentials, whether that be food or rent, things like that. And we would be happy if there are other people we can speak to about what's worked about this. We would be happy to share what we've learned.
Really
I think-
quick, because go ahead, Ben.
I was just gonna add on a little bit of that. I definitely appreciate Commissioner Gold's comments and thoughts. And I do think that, I mean, the success of this program, if you just read through the application, is amazing. And, you know, I think it really does show that community and should be really proud. I think that in terms of looking at this grant, they shouldn't be punished because other, you know, that there are other needy parts of our community. We should be looking at how we can kind of spread the knowledge that was gained through this and continue to build on it kind of throughout. And that's what I would like to see in any way that we can support kind of that process. But, you know, I think once again, I mean, it's clear that the passion, but also the success, you know, there's a lot of good that's been happening through this program. And if there's ways that we can support this, I think we should.
And just to kind of, I don't want to take too much time because I know we're having a lot of talk tonight, which is good. But I mean, like the purpose, as far as I can tell, of our committee is not to really, you know, try to scrutinize, but to make sure that we're here to be supportive of good faith actors trying to, or we're unpaid people doing things for the community as well. So we have all of that in common. And just to try to prepare applicants for going to the ANC. I know, you know, like it's a valid point to say, you know, other groups, other schools, whatever, could also be applying for grants. They haven't. That falls on us in part for doing better communication, but the process is in place and you're doing what you can. Really don't want to put too much of a burden, especially from a place of empathy, knowing that you're just trying to do things for people that you care about and probably some strangers too. So really appreciate you taking the time to go through all this.
Other comments or questions from commissioners? Okay.
Can I share very quickly, like as I work also with the school, so I support in the Mary Read. So I'm a parent, but also I support as a parent coordinator. So it's a community outreach. And if thank you for considering this and like the support and I'm here and I like not punish this group because others know. I serve also in the Ward 1 group, Kindred community for different schools. And I want to share that I'll be volunteering like to reach out to much other schools in the Ward 1 to share. Actually, we meet every month with some other schools which are in the I can check who is in the neighborhood. I know this Ward 1, but especially in Adams Morgan, who's there, because we have this group to share all the good practices that has happened in our school during the pandemic or other things. So I'm happy to volunteer, like to support, to reach out to my colleagues or people in the other schools on Adams Morgan to make awareness of this. Thank you for considering specifically this group of parents that I work closely supporting the PTO. But as said, is the PTO, but this group of parents like really saw the need and jumped in and has been supporting nonstop. And you can see some of these kids, like maybe some of you have in your mailboxes, some kids like doing Valentine cards and trying like to even stop people, distance and everything and mask. And it was so cute to see like all the same students of these families trying like to fund all every month the money needed to support those 40 families. That it's good to say too that some families they even reach out when hey, I have more hours, or I'm back with more hours in work, and they even like connect with Dari and the people that is coordinating to say like give these funds maybe to someone that is struggling more. And so it's an amazing work they've been doing, and thank you really for considering like supporting them.
Thank you for sharing that. That's lovely to hear as well. If there are no other questions or comments from commissioners, I think I I guess I'll say I know COVID has hit families and children really hard. So I like seeing a grant come in that is aiming to really directly support those individuals. And I appreciated Commissioner Faulkner's context on how we've handled similar grants in the past. And similar to Commissioner Wood, I don't think that it's my role to individually pass judgment on this application. I think there's, sounds like there's a mix of views from the other commissioners, and I think it's worthy of discussion by the full ANC to decide how to use our funds and how to best support the community. I would suggest that number one, we do need the line item budget, which is an easy thing to fix. But number two, if you can consider an alternative fiscal agent, I think it will strengthen the application and make it easier to get it through the Office of ANC, and it may change views on the application from the perspective of other commissioners. That being said, I think I would still move to recommend that we consider the grant at the next ANC meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Let's take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. And we will look out for an email on the budget, and let's follow up on options around the fiscal agent as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you guys. I mean, to everyone, I know that a lot of you have children and things, so they'd probably rather have your attention than us having it. So I really do appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Great. So we have one more applicant. Sorry, this has run longer than expected, but Daniel, would you like to introduce yourself while I, and the fund while I pull up your application?
Hello, do you hear me? Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. Thanks for inviting me, Celeste, Ben, and Peter. So the fund has been in existence since the late 90s. I've been a board member since 2018. There are 5 members on the board. We're non-hierarchical. We have different roles in terms of our relationship to Kalorama Park. One thing we do a lot of is troubleshooting when problems arise in the park. And I think, you know, Peter and Celeste, you've been on a lot of email chains that have, you know, presented problems. And so we interface with Department of General Services, Department of Parks and Recreation, Department, the DPW who picks up trash, all those things we try to keep abreast of, and it's an ongoing thing. It's you know, there's always things to take care of in the park. It's a large space. It's one of the, you know, it's one of the most important outdoor spaces in the community, I think, and there are others, of course, but that's become very, very apparent in the last year, since March of 2020, for obvious reasons. The park attendance has just exploded. We see the lawns full of people, birthday parties, all sorts of public gatherings. And we expect that to continue, and we welcome that. I mean, it's a great thing to see. But it does put stresses on the, you know, the ecosystem of the park, which we also try. That's also one of our missions, is to try to, you know, maintain, restore, and strengthen the ecosystem in the park. We have, you know, since I became a board member, we have taken upon ourselves to develop parts of the park that have been that have fallen into neglect. So, for example, adjacent to the basketball court, in 2018, that was fallow ground. Nothing was growing there. So several volunteer gardeners, we cleaned up that area, and it's now a thriving, beautiful garden called the Mariposa Garden. And that's one example. The plaza had fallen into neglect, unfortunately, because the plaza had been wonderfully redeveloped in the huge redevelopment that took place in 2011 and 12, which the fund actually had a big part of in terms of helping to fundraise and get that project funded and realized. So we really try to keep the ecosystem, healthy. So what we're asking for in this grant is to assist in that, because I think that park goers want an environment that is, well kept and clean, and so what we're doing, with our program is to realize that exactly. So let me ask you, what questions you might have about the fund and what we're doing.
I think what might be most helpful to start with is just going over a bit of exactly how you want to use this grant. And I have the budget up here, so we can run through that, or you can talk a bit more about the general plans for the project.
Okay, well, as you see, there's essentially 4 line items. What we're doing right now is we're replacing a lot of old fencing, particularly in the 19th Street Garden, which fronts both sides of the steps on the 19th Street side of the park. We find that without fencing, the investment in landscaping, which was made in that area, would suffer if we don't have fencing. So we want to replace the fencing. We've replaced some of it, and we still have some to replace. And we also want to add fencing in the plaza area, which we want to plant, around those 2 tree boxes, which are, like 35 feet long by 10 feet wide, 2 of them. So that's about another 200 feet of fencing before we can start planting the tree boxes in the plaza. There's a lot of people congregate in the plaza, and it's a very important area in the park. It's adjacent to the children's play lot. So the funds would be used for that, and the funds would be used to purchase mulch and organic compost. And this is for a year. This is not for just right now. This is for the spring, the fall, and then going into next spring. So it's sort of 3 seasons. And then of course there's a small amount for planting, for plants, bulbs, and seed to help start areas. They're essentially weeds right now that are not tended, not developed.
That's really helpful. And I, as I think everyone on the line, am frequently in Calorama Park these days, and certainly see how much use it's getting and has gotten over the last year. It's definitely increased in volume, and the fund's work to take care of the park is really appreciated. I think it's terrific. I do have 2 quick questions on the budget.
Sure.
The first is, one of the constraints with the grants we make is, and this is just this isn't our preference part of the deal of us getting the funding to be able to give it away. They have to be spent in 60 days. So I don't know if
Oh, okay.
a spring and early summer component of this could be pulled out, or if there is some additional alternative, more immediate needs. And the second, I don't know if we can approve a contingency line item. I think it has to be direct program costs.
All right.
That would have to be tweaked as well.
Okay. So as far as spending, it has to be spent in 60 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty rapid. And let me say, while we're doing a bit of a marathon with a lot of applications here because we've had a call for grants, the ANC does consider grants throughout the year. So there's no, you can come back in a month, 2 months, whenever you like with another application and we can consider it.
Okay, well, we could certainly amend the budget to reflect what we could spend in 60 days. That wouldn't be a problem.
And this is me kind of just brainstorming, and maybe I'm completely off base, but maybe there's even a chance that some of these suppliers, offer things like layaway or something where you can make an immediate purchase, but you don't actually physically need to obtain the materials within that 60-day period. Maybe an option.
That's possible too.
Best,
yeah,
but it's worth thinking about.
That's possible too. Yeah, we could try that.
Yeah, I don't know if that would. Again, we have to get. It's not just us who's reviewing this. It's report. It's coming from the
Sure, I understand. Yeah. Okay.
So we'll have to pass that budget along, whatever it is, to them.
Okay. Well, we can either amend the budget to reasonably anticipate what we're going to spend in 60 days, or as Peter suggested, figure out a way to spend it and then take possession of the merchandise when we need it, if that's agreeable. So.
Yeah, my gut reaction is probably the former is more likely to be approved, but this isn't my judgment call personally. So want to allow the other commissioners to ask questions and raise comments as well.
Yeah, just to follow up on my line of thought. I mean, a lot of the purchases explicit what you're doing are very seasonally oriented, so it might be worth considering that. I mean, if there's a way to defer some purchases to a second grant application later in the year, probably wouldn't hurt. But also, if that seems like for whatever reason is unfeasible because of the timing of seasons and things, and other options to consider. But yeah, I agree with Celeste.
Well, sure. I mean, it's perfectly fine if we just, I'll create a budget for what we're going to use in 60 days. And then we can certainly come back to you, later on in the summer or in the fall with another grant, as you suggested, Celeste. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I feel like I'm just coming with problems and not solutions tonight. I don't think we actually can approve multiple grants in the same calendar year for a single recipient. So I would suggest thinking about when you would most want the funds or would have the greatest need for the funds and to apply strategically that way.
Well,
now that's great, but if not, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, right now is a good time because it's just coming into spring. So it's great to be able to, put fencing up, put mulch and compost in the ground and start your planting, certainly in April, for the season.
Yeah.
And also what I would suggest too, if there's other projects that you're planning to do or to start now that you would need supplies for, that maybe we can adjust it for the things that you were planning to do later with this money and just kind of shift in terms of the projects you're working on to make sure that we can hit that requirement.
Sure. I'll give that some thought, but this is primarily what we invest in, hard costs that we invest in, is the garden, essentially. So we really don't have many other hard costs, except, for example, I suppose I could add, although, for example, we try to put on Community Day every year, and the last one we had was fall 2019. Obvious reason we couldn't put it on last year. Maybe we could put on this year, but it's not going to be in 60 days because we put it on in the fall. So, but look, I can adjust the budget for what I think reasonably we would spend in the next 60 days. I could certainly do that. So, I mean, some of it has been spent. Some of the fencing has already been put in. So we have money already spent, which we haven't fundraised for, if that's an acceptable use of it.
Again, I feel like all I'm coming with is problems and not solutions. The Office of ANC will not approve retroactive reimbursement.
Okay.
But I think you can clearly use the funds. It's just a question of how best to apply it and what to list in the budget. So.
Sure, I understand. Can you not seek a waiver for 60 days?
That is a good question. If you give me 1 second, I can actually check the policy. There's some provisions that can't be waived.
Okay.
And just kind of sort of related to that while she's searching, do you think it's important to point out how, like kind of a way of thanking you and the fund and other neighbors for doing what, I know it's a complicated issue, but doing what the city should be doing is maintaining the parks, but.
Well, yeah, but if I've learned anything since I've been doing this since 2018 is we can't count on them to do that. We just can't. And it's become even more apparent since March of 2020.
And this park is particularly complicated just because of being a National Park Service and DGS and DPW and all these different agencies. But
that's exactly right. Yeah, it's exactly right. Yet, there's a lot going on that we can be proud of. There's the composting, which 150 households are part of. There's that dedicated fenced off vegetable garden. There's a lot. There's the Mariposa garden. So there's a lot happening, which is essentially a volunteer effort. And that's what we want to support. That's what we want to support.
Yeah, and I was just looking over the grant policy, which terminology is not immediately clear to me. I saw a comment from Commissioner Faulkner in the chat as well that part of this is coming from our reporting requirements. I think what we should do is just to the best thing to do would be to get it reviewed by the Office of ANC. Should we want to move this forward to the to consideration at the ANC meeting in 2 weeks? We'll get an answer pretty clearly on whether or not the budget is okay that way.
Well, that said, I can definitely amend it to reflect not money that we've spent so far, but for supplies that we will need and that we could take delivery of within 60 days.
Yeah, the future purchase is definitely one that I know is a rule. So I think that would be great. Other questions from Commissioners Boots or Wood before I ask the other commissioners on the line?
I have no other questions, but I do think that approach of just let's keep it moving forward and work with Daniel to figure out the best way that we can get you the most amount of money.
Questions from other commissioners?
Okay, so should I send you a revised budget? Can you move it forward to the next ANC meeting, or how's it going to work?
If you want this to be your application for the year and you think that the funds can be used the best way possible right now, then yes, I would suggest you send a revised budget so we can forward that to the Office of ANC, and I will then move to have this advanced to the meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Will we have enough time to resolve the questions? Like if we can get a waiver, at least at the Office of ANC, if they don't get back to us before that 2 weeks, is it something that we can postpone? It's not going to cause this application to be rejected?
Yeah, I think we can just, first of all, they should, I know we've had a hard time getting in touch the past couple of weeks, but they should respond before then. And I think we could delay it to.
I just want to make sure that there's not like some rule that like if they have one chance at the ANC group.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Excuse me. I have no other comments or questions then. I would motion that we recommend to review this at the next ANC meeting, again, subject to that revised budget into OANC approval. Thanks. I've been talking for too long. And if we can please vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Okay, just one more thing. That additional part of the application, Celeste, I will fill that out and send that along with the revised budget, okay?
That sounds good. I'll send an email after this, just summarizing where we left off and with next steps.
Okay. Well, thanks for everybody for your time. Appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks for waiting.
Okay. Good night.
Okay, I think that concludes our agenda. Thanks everyone for staying for an extra long call. We'll look forward to seeing you at the regular meeting in 2 weeks.